I am resident of Collinwood for YouTube, Joel Sage, joined by my buddy Butch Rosenbalm. We're here to discuss the movie Ride Lonesome that stars Randolph Scott. You actually have, oh God, the one guy, oh God, I'm going to keep up.
Neil Roberts.
Yeah, Lee Van Cleef is in this too. And
Debut of James Coburn.
yep, James Coburn is in this. Thank you. He looks so young in this too, didn't
He does.
he?
I,
1959.
I to this day, I sometimes still get him and Lee Marvin mixed up when I'm like remembering films or old movies and stuff. It's like, wait a minute, was that Lee Marvin or was that James Coburn? I mean, not that they're the same guy, but they are similar.
They have a similar acting style. Like here's a great example. I know we're not talking this movie, but Fistful of Dynamite is a good example of where you could confuse Lee Marvin and James Coburn because James Coburn is in that movie. And he's a dynamiter. Duck, you sucker. So it's a good movie, but it's also a Western. We'll cover it down the line. But so yeah, you can. I'm with you. You can sort of get him and Lee Marvin confused a bit, but I gotta tell you, this was the first time I watched this movie when you said about it, and I really enjoyed it. I like how you got the rocky cliffs and the mountains. They don't start off in too much open terrain, but I like the. I don't know. To me, there's movies where you feel the person's confined a bit when they're traveling, and you see the rocks are a bit narrow that Randolph Scott's character taking his horse through, and it's like, man, this is like, I wonder if Randolph Scott's claustrophobic.
Yeah, when I was watching it, you saw my post or my comment on your post on Facebook. I have seen this before. I've seen it several times. I was thinking the first part of it is some serious desert porn. You know, you were talking about scenery porn. And I noticed that before, but I never really, I guess until you mentioned it and then we started talking about it, I hadn't really noticed how many Westerns do it. And, it's one of the things that I really like about the Western, it's, I won't say, we all know it's not a uniquely American thing, but it is based in America, and you see so much variation of the geography. I mean, I've been to the Four Corners area. I've been to Colorado, and I think I forget if I had an arm or a leg in one state. I forget exactly how that broke up, but there is serious variation down in the so-called Old West. Yeah. And some of it's really, really beautiful.
I liked how the fact that Randolph Scott's character plays a bounty hunter, and a lot of movies, you sort of get revealed the plot right away. Not this one quite.
No.
They tease you with it, and I love that with this. It wasn't something I was expecting, and it was pleasantly unsuspected.
Yeah, I realized that the two Randolph Scott films that I picked for us to do, they're both kind of non-typical Randolph Scott films. Because usually he's just like, he's like Captain Marvel of the Old West. He's like, hi, how are you guys doing? Do you need some help? I mean, he's like very friendly, and he's very, very gregarious. And Ben Brigade's kind of a butt. I mean, you find out things about him in his past through this film, but this is a very atypical Randolph Scott character.
You know who he reminded me a bit of he reminded me a bit of Arthur Morgan in Red Dead Redemption 2.
Yes.
When Arthur Morgan was on a bounty hunt. Because as Butch knows, because he's played Red Dead Redemption 2 as well as I have, that when Arthur Morgan, you get to decide that character, whereas in Red Dead 1, John Marston has already sort of decided for you in a sense. In Red Dead 2, you get to decide your character, and on a bounty hunter mission, Arthur Morgan could be just a mean old prick.
When I did the bounty missions, which were always my favorite things to do, it was Get in, get him, get out. And I didn't, can I get him easy? Yeah. Can I not? Screw it. Dynamite in there and kill them all, and I'll just take him back. I'm not doing it for the money. I'm just doing it to get you back. So, yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, in Red Dead Redemption 2, the beautiful thing is you really don't have to give a damn.
No, not at all. But it does have consequences when you don't give a damn. So
that is true. The my favorite one is the hooker in Valentine.
uh,
but we won't get into that. But so in this movie, Randolph Scott is appearing hunting a man called Billy, and he meets up with him, and you learn that Billy shot a man in the back, which is about the most cowardly thing you can do in a Western.
Except for maybe steal somebody else's horse.
Yes, there is that too. So Billy has a gang which actually belongs to his brother, more or less, and his brother, by the way, is played by Lee Van Cleef. Thank God Lee Van Cleef is the heel in this movie.
Yes.
Beautiful choice. Whoever the casting director was a genius in this movie. Right. What did you think of the cast of this movie? You something
I think it was solid all up and down. It's funny. I remember I got beat up in 5th grade because I said The Dorks of Hazzard was like the stupidest television show of all time, and I still stand by that. And James Best, who plays Billy, who is unfortunately probably best known as the brain damaged sheriff of Dorks of Hazzard, Roscoe Coltrane. Unfortunately, James Best is a really good actor. Not unfortunately, but considering what he's known for. If you've never, he does a really good role. He has 3 really good episodes of The Twilight Zone. The best, in my opinion, being The Last Rites of Jeff Myrtlebank, where he plays a guy kind of in the Old West who dies and then comes back and may or may not really come back. But the way he gets captured at the beginning is so stupid because he sets up camp. It's him and his horse. He's waiting on Ben Brigade to come get him, and Brigade comes to get him, and then part of the gang is way up behind him, and they shoot. Well, unfortunately, Ben Brigade's already got a gun on him. He's like, well, yeah, they'll get me, but I'll kill you first. And he's like, oh, you got me. Hey, go get my brother. It's just like, God, you are so stupid. But that being said, he's supposed to be a weasel.
Right.
He's not the brains. The brains is his brother Frank, Lee Van Cleef. So it fits with the character. But yeah, everybody in this film does a good job. All of the main characters anyway. Randolph Scott, I'm telling you, I tell you one thing, I keep thinking about this every time this movie finishes. I wish they'd done a few more movies about this character. Of course, they didn't do that back then.
No.
But Ben Brigade here in Ride Lonesome is arguably my favorite Randolph Scott character. And this is arguably my favorite Randolph Scott film.
I'll say this too. He's probably the roughest character Randolph Scott has ever played too. And it's simply not just because he's a bounty hunter, but because of how hard-nosed the character is throughout the movie. I mean, he's not just hard-nosed at the beginning, to your point. He's hard-nosed throughout this whole damn movie. I mean, he's just, like I said, he's a mean son of a bitch. And he is. But
to be a lawman in the Old West, or at least the mythological cinema Old West, you had to be a badass. I mean, you had to be a hard-nosed. It was not a job for, normal people like me and you to go around and go, yeah, I'm going to go bring that gang in.
It's funny. We what Western was it that we reviewed that Oh, yeah, Will Penny, where Will Penny says, "Well, I don't think he was up for the job of taking the job." Well, if the character was played by Randolph Scott, they would have been up for the job.
You know, if legend is to be believed, Randolph Scott was offered the role of, among many others, of Pike Bishop in The Wild Bunch, and of course, Scott had retired by then, and probably would have been appalled at the language and the violence in Wild Bunch. But I was thinking today how amazing, and I don't want to get rid of William Holden. Don't misunderstand me, but if we could look into like a little alternate universe where Randolph Scott played Pike Bishop in the Wild Bunch, I think that would just be amazing because you take this performance and you put that, add roughly 20 years to it, and here's this kind of bitter old cynical criminal, and yeah, I think would have been just awesome.
Yeah, that would have been amazing. Randolph Scott was probably the best Western actor of all time. I mean, there's no, I love John Wayne, I love Henry Fonda, but there's probably no one better than Randolph Scott. I mean, because he could play any character, and it never felt like he was playing the same character almost. I know he played good guys like How You Doing, but this character was so much different than what he would play. And I'm with you. I'm not sure if he would have loved the violence and language of the Wild Bunch, but if he could have gotten around that, I think he would have loved it.
Imagine Randolph Scott is Pike and Henry Fonda is Dutch.
Oh my god! I'll tell you. See, I love Ernest Borgnine as Dutch so much. He's just perfect. And the first time I ever saw Ernest Borgnine, on a side note, was in the Airwolf series.
Yep.
But my grandfather is like, "Hey, he was in some westerns." I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, it's funny. I used to. I don't know if Airwolf was no, the first thing I probably saw him in was Escape from New York, but I knew he'd had a pretty long career even by the time Airwolf came around. But I always just thought, he plays second banana, kind of not really, maybe not a dummy, but he's not the lead character. And then I got older and I kept seeing him in more and more films. And it's like, man, Ernest Borgnine is actually a really good actor. I mean, he might not ever. Well, actually, I think he did win an Oscar. But he was one of those guys. He showed up, and you knew you were going to get a good performance out of him.
Yeah, I think the movie he won an Oscar for is either called Marty or Martin. I forget which.
Marty.
Yeah, Marty. Thank you. But back to this movie. Sorry for straying. Folks.
Yeah, we are. I was thinking just a minute ago about how I always wanted to play a Deadlands character, the horror Western role playing game. I wanted him to be Scott Randolph. And he was just going to be, I was going to take the picture that's on this disc. I'm trying to, so everybody can see it a little bit. That was going to be my character right there. And he was just going to be like usually I don't play nice, friendly characters. I play characters very much like Randolph Scott's character in this. He was just going to be this friendly guy. What? You're going to go after some bad guys? Okay, I'll go help. Not a dumbass, but just very friendly, very helpful. And I think my old gaming group would have all been like, okay, what's he doing? But anyway, again, like we're getting back to the movie.
I like that. So I like the woman from the Decision at Sundown. You talked about her being in this movie, and she is. And she's actually she is a wife in this movie. And you don't meet her husband. You don't meet her husband, unfortunately, because he's dead.
Apparently, you don't marry her.
Yeah, there's this woman. This woman's last name should have just been Collins because she could have joined the Collins family. She was cursed, man.
Maybe she's related to the Cartwrights.
I'm telling you, this woman, this actress must love playing women with just completely horrible luck.
But she plays kind of a girl, if you will, in A Decision at Sundown, and in this movie, Ride Lonesome, she plays a grown woman. I mean, she's not maybe the wisest of the world, but looking at the two performances, she does a good job. She had because in both films, mostly she's supposed to sit there and look pretty and maybe say a few lines, but really looking at her performance in this film, it's like you see her good range. And unfortunately, I think this was around her last film. She didn't do that much more stuff. I know it wasn't much. I know she did some TV, and it's like, yeah, she's attractive. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having attractive people in films. And this being if you will, the ode cinematic West, it's all about the two-fisted guys going out and kicking butt and taking names. But she's not the usual. Oh, I dropped this, or the Jason's going to get me. I tripped over my high heels. I mean, she's not. She's thankfully not that kind of character.
No, if Jason Voorhees would have met this woman, he would have got met with a Winchester rifle, which I love.
It wouldn't have done no good, but she would have at least tried.
Right. I like the fact that she shoots the Winchester at the guy's feet, and she's so accurate with it. It's like, holy shit. I'm thinking this woman's going to use this gun later on in the movie. Now, to my disappointment, she doesn't. But I love how they plant that little seed. Hey, this woman isn't to be messed with.
You are incorrect, my good friend.
Oh, that's right. Sorry.
But we'll get to that.
Okay. My apologies, sir. But you meet, there's these two gentlemen who Randolph Scott's character knows, and the one man committed a crime, and he wants to bring in Billy for amnesty, not necessarily just the money, but he wants to live a new life. He doesn't want to go home and be arrested and hanged, which I like. You have many characters with these little plots of their own, and it makes the movie really, really interesting. You have the woman who's married and she wants to stay there, and and she's waiting for her husband. And I love how the stagecoach comes rushing in, and it does not stop. I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be epic, and it runs into the fence.
And then they finally stop it, and there's the guy with the big lance through his chest.
I know that. I thought for a moment, because usually when we deal with Indians in westerns, you see the bow and arrow, but this was. Now I know you do see there are moments you do see lances, but I like when they show the lances because it gives a little more of a horror feel to it for me. Mm-hmm. What did you think?
Yeah. It's. Lances aren't a weapon that's used very much in the average Old West, or even really in medieval. Yeah, so it reminds you that this isn't the local guys, if you will. This is something a little more different, and you like you said, it gives a little bit of a horror feel because you're like, oh my god, what are these people going to do?
Yeah, because that they're see what they don't know, what some of the other members don't know is Randolph Scott's character wants Billy's brother to come after him. That's another part of the side plot. I won't mention it now, but none of them know that right up front. And I like how when they bury the bodies, they know that the Indians are going to come. And I love this little shot where the two guys who are burying the bodies, and just over their shoulder, you see the smoke. There's some wicked looking camera angles in this movie that you see, because later on, when they're riding in the open country, going away from the Indians, you see the Indians in the backdrop, and it looks so creepy and eerie. It gave me, when I saw it, I'm thinking, it gave me some goosebumps on my arms. I'm thinking, this is some scary shit.
Yeah, that's that second shot you're talking about when they start coming up over the ridge, as Pernell Roberts and Randolph Scott are talking. They're kind of riding like this, and you see this ridge, and you just start seeing.
Yeah.
First I always, first time I saw it, I was like, it's trees or something. It's like, no, it's a bunch of Indians. I'm sorry, Native Americans. But yeah, it's really effective. And there's a scene when Pernell Roberts and James Coburn are burying the bodies, and Pernell Roberts says to James Coburn, "We're going to need that shovel some more," or something to that extent. And
Yeah.
it doesn't, it's not trying to do be a horror film or be claustrophobic, but it does. This is one of those movies that's going to come to a showdown. You just don't know how it's going to come down. And like you said, Randolph Scott's character, Ben Brigade, wants Frank the brother, but nobody else knows it, and he doesn't tell them. Yeah. So you have this whole tension where, Ben Brigade's going to take Billy in, but let's see. And I'm cheating looking at Wikipedia here. Sam Boone, who was played by Pernell Roberts, and Billy John, played by, no, that's Billy. James Coburn, who plays Whit. Yeah. I can't think of their names. They want Billy so they can get amnesty and start over with their lives. So they're kind of we're gonna have to take Ben. We're gonna have to take him for Ben. They find out that the Mrs. Lane's husband's dead from the Indians that want to buy her, and that I won't say it's a funny scene, but the Indian rides up. Ben Brigade knows that they want to parlay. So him and I forget why he takes Mrs. Lane with him, but he tells her, no matter what you see, don't react. And they're walking out, and they bring up a horse, and she starts screaming, "Ah!" And you're thinking, oh God, it's the typical silly, stupid woman character from westerns. And you find out the reason she's doing it, that's her husband's horse. It's like, oh, okay, well, that's kind of a little more understandable. But it totally, ruins the deal with the Indians. So they all leave. So you got Ben Brigade bringing Billy in, taking Mrs. Lane with them, and then you've got James Coburn and Pernell Roberts playing the friendliest kind of Robin Hood-esque character, if you will, kind of good, kind of bad. And it's funny. I never think of Pernell Roberts as friendly. But he's so friendly. His character is so friendly in this film. Because even when you watch Bonanza, which apparently he hated being on, he at times he's friendly-ish. But I mean, he's just, well, okay, Jewel, we'll just ride over here with you and help you bring him in. So you think it's going to be a showdown between James Coburn and Randolph Scott over Billy, and then not James Coburn, Pernell Roberts. And then Pernell Roberts is very much attracted to Mrs. Lane. And he, kind of tells her, I mean, maybe it's a little cringy in modern day eyes, but he kind of tells her, hey, I'd be obliged to look after you now. Yeah. I guess the cringiest part is she just found out her husband's dead, and like a day later he's hitting on her. But I mean, it's a movie. Let's not read that much into it. So you've got all these things going on because you get the impression there's kind of something between her and Randolph Scott, but Pernell Roberts is interested in her, and they all want Billy, and Frank's coming for him, and all these people are just kind of slowly coming together.
Yeah, I love how they introduce Lee Van Cleef's character, and he's, usually with villains, they're usually in one way. They're so cold-blooded. With some of the westerns we've been talking about, some of the villains we've been talking about aren't just cold-blooded. They're very smart. And that's what I like about Lee Van Cleef's character. He's like, okay, I know where he wants to have this. And I didn't know where they were going to end up. And when you see a tree, I knew right what that tree was. Oh, that's a hanging tree. I said it before they did. And I'm always like, how did you know what that was? And I was like, I've seen enough westerns to know what a hand injury is.
After they run from the Indians and they get away from them, and they're still headed to Santa Cruz, I think is the place. And the Lee Von Cleef had been really pushing his game, like, we need to rest the horses. We'll rest them when they're dead. And he's got my brother, and and then they get to where the Indians had kind of surrounded Randolph Scott and company with the around this ruined house or farmhouse. Yeah. And that's when they shoot him off. And back to Jules' point about her, Mrs. Lane using the Winchester, the Indian that tried to buy her from Randolph Scott, the chief, I believe, he jumps off his horse and he's going to get her, and she puts a bullet right in him. I mean, she ain't playing. Whatever respect you might have lost for her character when she kind of when she saw her husband's horse, man, she takes that respect right back, and they fight them off, because after they kill the chief, the other ones are like, yeah, screw this, we're not in this. And then Randolph Scott and crew stay there overnight. The next day they take off, but they're not in any hurry. So Pernell Roberts is starting to figure out there's something going on.
Yeah.
And then Frank, Lee Von Cleef, and his group show up, and he picks something up, and I never can tell what it is. And he's like, oh, they're not in any hurry. And that's when he says, oh, I know where we're going. And he finds out that he says that he hurt Ben Brigade. And that's where we're going. And he doesn't really say, if I remember right, he doesn't say specifically what he did right then, but you're like, oh, okay. Then you start realizing that, like Joel said, that Randolph Scott is simply using James Best to get Lee Von Cleef. And now Lee Von Cleef knows it. So the bad guys camp out at the same place, like, we'll be there tomorrow. We know where we're going.
I would like to give Lee Van Cleef's henchman in this movie the label as the worst henchman ever. Because it's like they're so scared. Like, I don't know what they're scared of more, him or like Ben Brigade. But when they get there, it's like it more looks like they're ready to run before he moves forward. I'm thinking these guys are, other than Lee Van Cleef, like these guys are a bunch of chicken shits.
Well, Ben Brigade does have quite the reputation. It seems like everybody's heard of him. Everybody knows him. So, there's four guys. And when the big showdown happens, Pernell Roberts and James Coburn take out two of them right away. And then the other two just kind of like, screw this, we're out of here. So, yeah, I think those two are pretty chicken. But by the same token, you're on the run all the time. You have to have a strong and slightly charismatic leader to keep them going. So,
yeah,
it's kind of like what is that movie? Is it not Big Jake? Not McHugh. It's the John Wayne film. It starts out at the very beginning in all the snow, and I can't think of the name of it at the moment. I can see it, and they're all like, Cahill, U.S. Marshal. And they're like, is that you, JD? And like a couple of them just kind of put their guns down, like, okay, yeah, we can't beat John Wayne. So it's kind of like that with Ben Brigade. They're like, no, not in a fair fight.
Right. His reputation is, and it's funny, there are other movies that use this with other characters, like their reputation precedes them. And you're right, Ben's reputation is known throughout by a lot of people, and especially Frank and his gang, and even Billy knows his reputation. So it's really great to see heels put the baby face over, to use a wrestling terminology, which I love, because when you see something like that, the character has their own cachet. I mean, you sort of kind of figure out for that self, but when you hear other characters talk about them, and it's not so it's not so overbearingly done in this movie it makes you annoyed at it. No, it just makes you understand the character a bit more, that hey, this character has their own tough posterior way, and it's something you've seen in the beginning throughout this whole movie. I mean, in many ways, Ben, though he's stalling, like you were saying, he is sort of leading this pack of this widow and these two men who've committed a crime. And it's like, man, Ben's just kicking ass and taking names, and you love him for it. But I love how they tell right there. You hear Frank, Billy's brother, say about his wife, and everybody hears it, and it's so it even though you knew about it, Ben said about it, it makes Frank saying about it chilling. What did you think?
Let's see. Frank says he heard him. I was thinking that, and then I may be misremembering, that Randolph Scott finally the night before the big showdown, he's talking to Mrs. Lane. And but anyway, he's like, yeah, he goes, he tells her, finally, he's like, I had a wife, looked a lot like you, which kind of plays into the possible romance that you kind of hint at. He was a sheriff of the town they were going to. Frank, he sent Frank to jail. Frank got out. Randolph Scott's character waited for him to show. He never showed. Randolph Scott goes home. His wife's missing. And guess what Frank had done? No, probably not what you're thinking. He took her to the hanging tree and he hung her.
Yeah.
So this is where Ben Brigade is going to get his pound of flesh, and that put it. I guess it doesn't really make it like any more bloodthirsty because it's just somebody talking. You don't see anything. There's no flashback, but you see Frank was a bastard.
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of, and it's Lee Von Cleef, so you just kind of go, yeah, that's something he would probably do. Yeah, but you see, and Randolph Scott tells that story, and you're like, okay, now I know why this guy is kind of a hard ass. You imagine coming up on your wife hanging from a tree dead. I mean, yeah, that's going to change you. You're not going to be friendly and cheery that much anymore. So it's very effective the way they do that, and it's not so many characters. And I'm not trying to speak ill of Clint Eastwood, but it seems like a lot of his westerns deal with it a lot, where he's just got this kind of surly badass thing going on, and you kind of know, yeah, don't mess with him. But in this movie, with just a few lines of dialogue, you're like, oh. Yeah. Yeah. Let's not. No. That makes sense, and we're not going to bother him.
I like how I'm with you. There's no flashback, but the story they tell from Ben's standpoint, and later on at the hanging tree when Ben's got Billy on the horse, the noose is around his neck, and it's over the tree. And he goes, all I got to do is smack this horse and he'll hang. You could shoot him down if it doesn't break his neck, which I thought for a moment here, this is where the other two guys are going to turn on him because they want the amnesty. But that's what shocked me most. But I think the reason they don't is because you hear Frank say about, oh, you want me because of what I did to your wife and stuff, and it's just like, again, Lee Von Cleef, when he plays a villain, he's a son of a bitch. Thank God.
Yeah, the Pernell Roberts and James Coburn hear the story, and they're like, we'll help you take him down. Then we'll deal with who's taking Billy in. Excuse me. And like you said, he's got poor James Best. I mean, he's already sweating a little bit on the horse, and it works really good because Lee Von Cleef can't come in just firing his gun because that's going to scare the horse. But sooner or later he's going to have to do something. I mean, it's a really, I'm sure somebody really smart can go, well, all he had to do was blah 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 blah, and it would have been okay. But it's like, there's an awful lot of ifs, there's, and buts there. So it's very effective, and and thankfully it doesn't break down to one of these, where they quick edit of Randolph Scott, quick shot of Lee Von Cleef, Mrs. Lane, Frank, Billy, and we don't have that. It's like, well, I'm going to have to do something. And, and Lee Von Cleef charges him, and that's it. That's it for Frank. I mean, he gets him. And the cool thing is, as soon as he does, Randolph Scott turns and shoots Billy down.
Yep.
I want to point out something that some people may not know. I'm sure you know this. There are basically two ways to die when you get hung. The proper way is they have the noose and it's come up, and when the floor drops, it's supposed to break your neck and you die immediately. Arguably, it's more humane than the second way. I'll put it that way. The second way is the one that most people think of. You're being choked. Yeah. And that's a horrible, not that there's really that many good ways to die, but that's a horrible way to die. So the implication is that Billy is going to choke. He's not at a height. This is not going to break his neck. And then you find out Randolph Scott didn't want to break his neck. He didn't really want to kill him. Billy was simply the means to get what he wanted, which was Frank.
What you find out is, in many ways, this is a revenge Western, which is nice because there are revenge movies that get done this way, but there are just plain out old-fashioned revenge movies that the plot right from the beginning. It's like, well, couldn't you just waited to reveal that? This movie does it right, and that's what I'll applaud with it, that you don't know the ulterior motive of your bounty hunter. You just think this is about a bounty, and I like that. I really enjoyed watching this. Butch, great.
And they really play that up with Mrs. Lane and the other guys, and talking about amnesty, and she really kind of gives Randolph Scott some major crap. How much you want to get paid for him, and how will this do you until you get the next man, and it's kind of like. Intentional misdirection, but also it's kind of like, lady, I don't think you know what you're talking about. But you find out, no, it's not really all about. Yes, he is a bounty hunter, but it's not 3:10 to Yuma, if you will. It's not, and not that that's a bad film, either one of them really. But yeah, like you said, it's a revenge flick, but it's a revenge flick hidden, if you will. It's not like Kill Bill, where right away it's a revenge flick.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's what I enjoy about this most. It builds toward not just this plot. It starts off as a simple plot, but then there are a lot of subplots underneath that are really good and meaningful. Nothing is wasted here in this Western and in this story. It was really well written and well performed. I will give you one that if they could do a sequel to this, and I got just the actor to play Ben, and that would be Kurt Russell.
You know what? You can't see it. I've got it hanging up back over there. You'd be hard pressed to find somebody more interested in seeing Kurt Russell make more films. So yeah. I'm still waiting on Escape from Wherever #3. I'm just saying that John Carpenter and Kurt Russell.
No pressure.
But Kurt Russell. But yeah. I would be happy. I wouldn't be upset if Kurt Russell played Mrs. Lane. I don't really care. I'm a big Kurt Russell fan. I joked with Patrick a long time ago, our mutual friend, and I said, our dad's generation grew up with John Ford and John Wayne. Our generation, Generation X, at least I grew up with John Carpenter and Kurt Russell. And that's our, and while we're wrapping the story of the film up, So they defeat the bad guys, and Pernell Roberts comes out and he's like, "Guess there's no way to get Billy other than go over you." It's like, well, guess you'll have to take him. And you start, comes so running, and he comes slowly up, and you're thinking, "Oh crap! I mean, they just fought together. Are they really gonna fight?" And after a second, Randolph Scott looks at him and goes, "You might want to get the horse. It's gonna be hard riding him, walking him into town." And then throws him the key. I mean, he got what he wanted. He lets Pernell Roberts and God, now I'm drawing a blank after saying his name. Thank you, James Coburn. They can have the Billy to get their amnesty, because there's a point where they're talking, and Randolph Scott knows about Pernell Roberts's past misdeeds, and he's like, basically asks him, "Does your kind ever change?" And Pernell Roberts is kind of like, "If you want to." And I'm completely paraphrasing and reading into here. These are not quotes. And he tells him, Randolph Scott tells him, "I hope you meant what you said about walking the straight and narrow." He goes, "Because if you don't, I'll be the one coming after you."
Yep.
And says it in just such a, it's not like the, "How we talking?" And here's the threat. It's more like, "And we're talking, and I'll be the one coming after you." I mean, there's no threat, there's no menace, there's no malice, but I don't want that to happen.
It's so good too, because he delivers it in such a manner, like you said, it's not threatening. It's just like, "I hope you meant what you said, because I'll be coming after you if you don't."
Then the last scene is so appropriate. I love the last scene. The last scene really launches this into a next level. And I know that sounds crazy because there's one line of dialogue, and it's Pernell Roberts, James Coburn, Mrs. Lane, and Billy riding out, and you see smoke in the background, and Pernell Roberts turns and looks and says something to the effect of, "Well, I guess that's appropriate." And you look back, and then the camera comes back around, and there's Randolph Scott, and the hanging tree is burning.
Yeah.
And he set it on fire. And it's kind of funny. If you look real quick, you'll see, I don't know if it's really Lee Von Cleef, but you'll see Frank still dead in the ground behind him. But I always like that, because to me, that says that Ben Brigade has closed that chapter. He got what he wanted and needed, and he's going to be moving on in his life. I mean, it wraps it up so well for me. If I turn the movie off before that scene, which I don't, but if I had to go to the bathroom, let's say if I pause it, I have to go back and watch that, because then that just, it wraps it up, and it does it so well. It's odd, I guess, for one such a minor scene, really, to do so much, but it does. It just wraps everything up so well.
Yeah, it's really good too. I like how when the tree's burning, and when you see the smoke, and again, the camera work in this movie is really neat, because they use the background a lot to tell their story. I mentioned the Native Americans. Here they used smoke to signal war, that the Native Americans were coming to get them. And here they use smoke in a different way, but it's a symbol of he's moved on, he won, he got his revenge. But it's so meaningful though too. It's not a throwaway scene at all.
No.
It's really, really well done. The cinematography in this movie is really it's creepy, but it's amazing at the same time.
This is another one of the Randolph Scott films. He worked with a director, and I believe his name is pronounced Bud Bodeker. And they did, I don't know how many films together. I think they did the collection I've got right here. I think they did all of the ones in this one, and there's more. And you kind of have the straightforward ones like A Lawless Street, and then you've got the ones like this. And they're all westerns. They all tell stories about the West, but and looking back at them in the 1950s, early 1960s time, they're pretty straightforward stories for the most part, but each of them are a little bit different. Like Decision at Sundown, you know, these guys kind of get themselves besieged. Almost as reminiscent of Assault on Precinct 13 or Rio Bravo, where this is a revenge flick, but it doesn't
feel like it. Yeah.
feel like it. Yeah, but it is, but it isn't. And I think it's really nice the way these guys work together and told this story, and it's entertaining. I was going to save this up for the. Do you have anything else? It's a really good story told by good people doing their job, and unless you just like hate westerns or can't stand one of the main characters, this is a good film to watch, and you should you'll watch it and go, yeah, that was pretty good. I like that.
Mm-hmm. It really is good. I give it a solid recommendation. I give this a 8 out of 10. Really, really, really good.
I give it a 9, maybe a 9.5.
It's really good. I love the camera work in this is really, really cool. And I really like how when the woman's looking, when Miss Lane is looking, and the one guy, he's like, look at her, she's got great eyes, and he's like, and there's James Coburn's like character's like, yeah, great eyes, and he's like, her eyes. I was like, what?
Yeah, her eyes.
Oh my god, that was like, for as tense as this movie was, they added just the right amount of comedy and the right line, and it was like funny too. So.
Yeah, they do. They have the comedy. It's not like Three Stooges or anything, but yeah, they hit it just right. It's a good balance, and it's kind of like a horror comedy. I'm thinking immediately of Return of the Living Dead, which just hits that right balance between horrible shit happening and funny stuff being said and done. And then you get right back to something horrible happening. And this movie kind of has it, like you talk about, that sense of dread, the impending showdown between Frank and Ben and Pernell Roberts, and what's going to happen with Mrs. Lane, and it still all just kind of works together and hits all the marks.
Really, really great movie. I have a solid movie for us to watch next week too.
All right.
It's a different kind of bounty. It's what happens when a town relies on bounty hunters a little too much. It stars Henry Fonda, Warlock.
I haven't watched that in a long time, so I'll be looking forward. And for anybody that's watching this, it's on multiple. I think it's on Tubi. I believe it's on more than one service, actually.
Yep. It's on Tubi that I know of, so that's the one I'm going to watch it on to give it a rewatch. And
I think I might have it here, but it's so funny because, I'll bring my disc up if I have it. And Jill asked me, she goes, "Why do you bring it up when you end up just watching it on one of the streaming services?" I'm like, just don't ask me that kind of question. And it boils down to, sometimes it's not. This movie is, I could not find it on any streaming service.
Yeah.
So darn, have to take this upstairs. But it's kind of more of a backup. But also some of them, especially if it's a full-fledged, Blu-ray or DVD that's got some special features, I like to watch them. And maybe have a few more interesting and hopefully intelligent comments to say than my usual blathering and rambling.
You do a good job, buddy. I'll give you some bad inspiration. See, when I want to watch like some of my westerns, I'll just like bring a handful out and I'll put it right down on the table. My wife's like, "Are we gonna watch all this?" I'm like, "You damn right we are."
Damn right we are.
Yeah, wanna. But in Red Dead Redemption 2, the hooker in town. See, I'll tie her up, put her on the back of my horse, take her all the way cross country into snowy mountains, and I'll just leave her. I'll just leave her. I'm horrible.
I something I keep meaning to do, and I read it gave me the idea. I read it online. In Red Dead Redemption 2, killing makes you lose honor, and you kind of want to keep on, good honor, or at least medium honor, which is why currently in my long save, the one save that I've had the entire time I've had the game, my honor is at rock bottom. But because I'll be riding along, hey partner, you fella, how are you, and then someone will say something like, say something rude. It's like, what'd you say? But anyway, some guys I'll lasso, throw on the back of the horse, and take them to a pig farm. Because pigs, you have to hide the evidence of the body if you've killed them. So I'll throw them on the back of the horse. But what I'd want to do, and you take them to the pigs. If people don't know, pigs will eat anything. But what I've thought about doing is capturing somebody, hog tying them, taking them to the pig farm, and throwing them in the pigsty, and seeing if they'll eat them, while they're still alive. I'm curious how that'll work. And I don't know if I want to hang around and hear what they have to say.
You could also take them to the bayou and just dump them in the swamp and let the gators have them.
Gators. I will tell. I can tell you that gators will take tied up people.
Yes. Yes.
Don't know how I know that.
Right. Have you seen on Hunt Showdown they have the Inferno map?
No.
I'll send you a picture of it. I have a picture of it on my phone. It's really, really cool. The map is on fire. I've been playing some Hunt Showdown here recently, but it is crazy.
I'm really surprised that I really loved, and I'm sure you know this, putting two and two together about me. I loved Undead Nightmare for Red Dead 1.
Yes.
I'm like, why have you not released Undead Nightmare 2 or whatever you want to call it, or something, something. I get it. Rockstar's only worried about GTA because it makes them $1 million a day or something, but they put so much effort and time into Red Dead 2. It's like, and that's it. I mean, you're only worried about online, and now they're not even worried about that. So,
could you imagine Undead Nightmare with that map and Red Dead 2? My God.
Could you imagine Undead Nightmare with Arthur Morgan? Of course, it'd probably last about 5 minutes. There's I think I've mentioned it before. There's a website called writeups.org that does write-ups of various characters for role-playing games. And there was a guy there who did a write-up of John Marston, and I helped a little bit with it, not much, but I'm very proud that my name is listed on it, on the write-up. And somebody had said something in the game or on the mailing list about, well, what about a write-up of Arthur Morgan? It's like, just take John Marston, and this guy can swim. That's and make some minor changes. Because by the end of Red Dead 2, Arthur's stats are basically the same as John's, or by towards the end of Red Dead 1, Arthur's John's are the same as Arthur's. However you want to phrase that. I mean, so you could use the same ones. Because as the game goes, Red Dead 2, for those of you who don't know, is a prequel.
Yep.
And John kind of becomes Arthur's apprentice, if you will. So it just stands to reason that they're very similar characters.
I'll tell you a funny character for those who, if you've never played Red Dead 2, whoever listens to this, Sean McGuire is hilarious. Oh my God!
You remember when when they hang the O'Driscolls, and you're watching it? I had out my sniper rifle, and I'm thinking, I kind of want to shoot him. And I did try to shoot the rope, so they got to hang him again.
Yeah.
But I shot somebody and it restarted. It made me to lose the mission. Whoever I accidentally shot. So next time I just watched it through the scope, going, yeah, you're gonna do the old Spandau ballet.
One of my favorite things to do on that mission where Colm O'Driscoll gets hung in Saint Denis, which is basically New Orleans. Yeah, for those who don't know. Now, usually I save this for the cemetery mission. Put it in first person mode, pull out your shotgun, and just go up to the nearest looking cowboy and blow their damn head off. And you'll fail the mission with ease.
You know, there's these gangs that you can run into in the various areas. You know what I'm talking about, but I'm trying to describe it for anybody just watching it. And over time, you eventually slaughter them. Well, I really enjoyed. There's some cannibals, skinners, and then there's what is it? Lemoyne Raiders.
Yep.
But anytime I run into any of the gangs, first of all, I like to throw dynamite in there, and I put on the bear outfit, and I attack them at night. And after I've killed them all, I go up, I loot their bodies, I pull out my shotgun and blow their heads off, and then put all their bodies either on the fire or in a pile, and then light it with the flammable liquid with what we would call a Molotov cocktail now.
Yep.
And it makes this sound when you blow their heads, like it's very wet. And Jill, when I do that, Jill's like, Connor, are you shooting their heads off again? Need to know who got them.
But one of my favorite things to do too is just burn somebody alive. It's hilarious.
Using the incendiary, I really like to use the incendiary shells on the shotgun. Only problem is it destroys anything they're carrying, so you can't loot them. It's like, crap.
I know, right? It happens so quick too. There's nothing you can do. But I'll send you that picture of that for Hunt Showdown.
Okay.
But it's always fun bringing you on, buddy. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Go check out.
Always a pleasure here, but I appreciate it.
Yep. Go check out Ride LoneSome starring Randolph Scott. Really, really great movie. See you next weekend, Butch.
Take care, everybody.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.